A young woman abandons her busy city life to return to her late mother's forgotten village home. The land is dry, the house crumbling, and the villagers doubtful. But through tears, sacrifice, and determination, she revives her mother's legacy. What starts as struggle turns into a miraculous transformation, bringing life, hope, and healing to the village. If you enjoy African folk stories filled with mysteries, betrayal, and justice, subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from, and journey with us as the story begins. The city of Abadan woke before the sun, and so did Morinkeji Afalan. From her small apartment window, she watched yellow buses argue with the road, horns shouting like angry spirits that never rested. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and ambition. Everyone here was chasing something, yet no one ever seemed to catch peace. Morinkeji stood before the mirror, adjusting a blouse that no longer felt like hers. Her eyes were tired in a way sleep could not cure, carrying the weight of years spent proving she mattered. The city had given her money, status, and a sharp tongue, but it had taken something quieter, something sacred, without asking permission. Her phone buzzed on the table, vibrating like a warning drum. She ignored it at first, finishing her makeup with careful hands, but the buzzing returned, persistent, almost angry. When she finally picked up the call, the voice on the other end cracked like dry firewood. "KG," said Mama Abimbola, her mother's elder sister, calling from Itoro village. The old woman spoke slowly, as though the truth itself was heavy. She said the house was collapsing, that rain entered freely now, that weeds had swallowed the compound where Morinkeji once learned to walk barefoot. Morinkeji sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Her mother's house, Mama Ronk's house, the place that smelled of palm oil, stories, and evening prayers, had not crossed her mind in years. In the city, memories were luxuries people could not afford. Mama Abimbola continued, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "Your mother's spirit is restless. That house is crying. If nobody returns, it will die, and something else will die with it." Silence swallowed the room after the call ended. Outside, Ibadan roared as usual, unconcerned. Inside Morinkeji's chest, something shifted painfully, like an old wound reopening without mercy. She remembered her mother's laughter under the mango tree. She remembered nights without electricity, when stories were told instead of watched. She remembered promises whispered into the mud walls, that no matter how far she went, she would return. Morinkeji pressed her palm against her chest as tears burned her eyes. The city had taught her how to survive, but it had never taught her how to belong. And in that moment, surrounded by concrete and noise, she realized she had abandoned more than a house. She had abandoned herself. The sun rose fully, flooding her room with light that felt like judgment. And for the first time since she left Itoro, Morinkeji whispered the village's name aloud, as if calling back a lost part of her soul. Morinkeji did not go to work that morning. She sat on the edge of her bed long after the sun had climbed high, listening to the city breathe through cracked windows. Every horn outside sounded like a question she no longer had answers for. By afternoon, her suitcase lay open on the floor. She packed slowly, touching each item as though deciding which version of herself deserved to come along. High heels were left behind. So were half her dresses. She chose simple clothes, unsure why, but her hands seemed to remember something her mind had forgotten. At the motor park, conductors shouted destinations with desperate voices. Itoro, Ogbomosho Road. Last seat. The sound struck her chest like fate calling her by name. As the bus rumbled out of Ibadan, the city began to loosen its grip. Tall buildings shrank into dust-stained shops, and the smell of petrol softened into the scent of earth. Morinkeji rested her forehead against the window, watching billboards disappear one by one, like lies being stripped away. The road narrowed, cracked, and curved like an old story retold many times. Palm trees leaned over her like elders watching a prodigal child return. Red soil rose with every turn of the tires, settling gently on the bus like a blessing. She remembered this road. She remembered sitting on her mother's lap as a child, counting goats, and singing nonsense songs while Mama Ronk laughed until tears fell from her eyes. The bus slowed as it approached Itoro. No signboard welcomed her. Only a rusted zinc sheet hung crookedly from a pole, barely showing the village name. Her heart thumped loudly, not with fear, but recognition. When she stepped down from the bus, silence greeted her. The kind of silence that listens. The kind that remembers. A young boy stared at her from a distance, then ran off shouting, "Mama Abimbola! Someone from the city has come oh." Dust clung to Morinkeji's shoes as she walked further in. The village looked smaller than her memories, but heavier somehow, like it carried years of waiting in its breath. Mama Abimbola emerged from a compound, bent with age but sharp-eyed. For a moment, the old woman simply stared. Then her lips trembled, and she dropped her walking stick. "My child," she whispered, pulling Morinkeji into a hug that smelled of shea butter and smoke. "You finally heard the call." Morinkeji buried her face in the woman's wrapper and cried. Not polite tears, not city tears. These were village tears, deep, loud, cleansing. As they walked toward her mother's compound, eyes followed her. Some curious, some judgmental, some cold. Whispers floated through the air like restless spirits. "That's Ronk's daughter. She left us for the city. What is she doing back now?" Morinkeji felt every word like a pebble under her skin. But she kept walking. When the house finally came into view, her breath caught painfully. The roof sagged like a tired back. Walls that once stood firm now crumbled in places. Weeds ruled the compound, tall and defiant, as though daring anyone to challenge them. She stood there for a long time without speaking. This was not just a house. This was her mother's sweat, her prayers, her sacrifices. Mama Abimbola touched her shoulder gently. "Many promised to fix it," she said softly. Nobody came. Morinkeji stepped forward and placed her palm on the cracked wall. It was warm, as though the house still lived. "I'm here now," she whispered. And somewhere deep beneath the soil, something ancient stirred. Morning came gently in Itoro, but it did not come kindly. Morinkeji woke on a thin mat laid across her mother's old floor, her back aching as though the house itself was testing her resolve. Sunlight slipped through holes in the roof, landing softly on her face like curious fingers. She stepped outside to greet the day, barefoot on the red earth. The compound looked worse in daylight. Weeds had grown taller than memory, and ants moved freely through cracks in the walls. The mango tree her mother once nursed leaned weakly, its branches thin and tired. Morinkeji fetched water from the stream with Mama Abimbola. Women stopped talking when they saw her. Some stared openly. Others turned away as though her presence disturbed something long settled. "City girl," one woman muttered under her breath. "Let's see how long she lasts." At the market square, she felt the weight of eyes follow her steps. Men leaned against bicycles, chewing cola nut, measuring her with silent judgment. Children whispered, half curious, half amused. She greeted elders respectfully, kneeling where tradition demanded. Some responded with forced nods. Others ignored her completely, their silence louder than insults. By afternoon, hunger clawed at her belly. She had brought money, but money did not buy goodwill. A woman refused to sell her vegetables, claiming she had none left, even as fresh leaves sat beside her. Morinkeji returned to the compound with empty hands. Mama Abimbola sighed deeply, stirring thin soup over firewood. "They think you will leave again," the old woman said. "They don't want to hope." As evening fell, laughter rose from nearby compounds. Morinkeji sat alone beneath the mango tree, listening to life continue without her. She wondered if she had made a mistake, if the city's noise was better than this quiet rejection. That night, rain fell suddenly. Water dripped through the roof, splashing onto the floor. Morinkeji moved pots around, catching leaks with trembling hands, her heart heavy with exhaustion. She lay down, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced. Sleep came slowly, wrapped in doubt. Then the dream came. She stood in the compound, but it was whole again. The walls stood tall, the roof firm, the mango tree full of fruit. Her mother, Mama Ronk, sat on a wooden stool, grinding pepper calmly. "Why did you leave me like this?" her mother asked without anger. Her voice carried sadness older than words. Morinkeji fell to her knees in the dream, tears streaming. "I didn't know how to stay," she cried. Mama Ronk stood and placed a hand on her head. "The land remembers those who remember it." Morinkeji woke with a sharp gasp. The rain had stopped. The house was silent, but the air felt different, charged, watching. She sat up slowly, her heart pounding. This was no ordinary dream. Outside, the mango tree rustled though there was no wind. And for the first time since she arrived, Morinkeji did not feel alone. The sun rose hard over Itoro, unforgiving and bright. Morinkeji stood in the middle of the compound, staring at the weeds that had swallowed her mother's home. They stood tall and wild, mocking her thin arms and soft city hands. She borrowed a rusty cutlass from Mama Abimbola. The handle was rough, biting into her palm the moment she gripped it. Still, she lifted it, breathing in deeply, and brought it down against the thick grass. The first swing shocked her body. Her arms screamed in protest, muscles tightening with pain she had never known in air-conditioned offices. Sweat rolled down her face, blinding her eyes, but she did not stop. Villagers passed by slowly, watching. Some shook their heads. Others laughed openly, pointing at her blistering hands. City people think village life is film, a man said loudly. She will give up before noon. Morinkeji heard every word. Each insult landed like a stone on her back, yet she kept cutting, weeds falling one after another like defeated enemies. By midday, her palms were raw and bleeding. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but pride would not allow her to stop. She tried to lift a fallen zinc sheet from the roof and failed. Her legs trembled, and she collapsed onto the earth, chest heaving, tears mixing with dust. For a moment, she stayed there, face pressed against the soil. The earth felt cool, steady, like it was holding her. A memory surfaced. Her mother's voice, laughing gently. The land is not weak. Respect it, and it will carry you. Morinkeji pushed herself up slowly. She tied her wrapper tighter and returned to work with renewed stubbornness. By evening, only a small portion of the compound was cleared. Her body ached everywhere, but something inside her felt strangely alive. Mama Abimbola brought her water and thin porridge. You don't have to suffer like this, the old woman said softly. Morinkeji shook her head. This house suffered alone. Now it won't. As night fell, her wounds throbbed fiercely. She washed her hands and noticed the blood had stained the soil dark. The wind passed through the mango tree, gentle and approving. Somewhere far away, a drum sounded once, low and deep, though no festival was happening. Morinkeji lay down exhausted, body broken, spirit awake. And deep beneath the ground, the land began to recognize her. The next morning came with a cruel stiffness. Morinkeji tried to sit up and cried out sharply as pain tore through her back and arms. Her body felt like it had been beaten by unseen hands all through the night. She forced herself to stand, gripping the wall for balance. Her palms were swollen, blistered, and red, the skin torn in places. For a moment, fear crept in, quiet and dangerous, whispering that she was not built for this life. Outside, the village was already awake. Smoke curled from cooking fires, and voices floated through the air, steady and practiced. Life continued easily for others, while her body rebelled against every movement. Morinkeji washed her face at the well, wincing as cold water touched her wounds. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes sunken, lips dry, strength fading fast. At the market square, laughter erupted as she passed. Two women whispered loudly, not caring if she heard. She thinks suffering will impress the spirits. She should go back to Abadan before she disgraces her mother's name. The words pierced deeper than hunger. Morinkeji lowered her head and kept walking, but her chest burned painfully. By afternoon, the sun punished her mercilessly. Dizziness crept in, turning the world soft and unstable. Her legs weakened as she tried to lift a wooden beam from the house. Her vision blurred. The ground rushed toward her. She collapsed beside the broken wall, dust rising around her like smoke. For a long moment, she did not move. Children gathered first, curious and unsure. A few adults followed, standing at a distance, arms folded. She has fainted, someone said flatly. City body. Mama Abimbola pushed through the small crowd and knelt beside her. She pressed her hand to Morinkeji's forehead and gasped. She's burning, the old woman cried. This is not ordinary weakness. They carried Morinkeji inside the house and laid her on the mat. Her body shook with fever, lips trembling as she whispered words no one could understand. That night, the rain returned, heavy and relentless. Water dripped through the roof, falling close to her head, as though the house itself was crying with her. Morinkeji drifted in and out of consciousness. In her fevered state, she saw her mother again. But this time, Mama Ronk stood barefoot in the rain. You are bleeding for the house, her mother said gently. But blood alone is not enough. Morinkeji tried to speak, but her voice failed her. Tears rolled down her temples, soaking the mat. Do not fight the land, Mama Ronk continued. Listen to it. When Morinkeji woke the next morning, the fever had eased slightly. Her body still ached, but her mind felt clearer, strangely calm. Outside, villagers whispered. Some believed she would leave now. Others said she would not survive another week. Mama Abimbala sat beside her, grinding herbs. Many have tried to return after leaving, she said quietly. Few stay when suffering shows its teeth. Morinkeji slowly sat up, her movements careful but determined. I'm not here to prove anything to them, she said hoarsely. She looked around the broken room, at the leaking roof, the cracked walls, the dirt floor. I'm here because this place still knows my name. The wind brushed through the house softly, almost in agreement. And for the first time, even in weakness, Morinkeji smiled. Morinkeji did not rise with the sun that morning. Her body still carried the weight of fever, but her spirit felt alert, listening, like something had shifted its position inside her overnight. Mama Abimbala warned her not to step outside. The elders say the land behind this compound is not for weak feet, the old woman said, tying her headscarf slowly. Rest first. But Morinkeji felt a pull she could not explain. It came from behind the house, beyond the fallen fence, where thick bushes had swallowed a footpath long forgotten. As evening approached, the pull grew stronger. The wind changed direction, brushing insistently against the back of the house, rattling dry leaves like whispered instructions. After nightfall, Morinkeji rose quietly. Her body protested, but she wrapped her shawl tightly and stepped outside, guided only by moonlight and instinct. The bushes parted reluctantly as she moved through them. Thorns scratched her legs, but she did not stop. The air felt heavier here, ancient, watching, aware. She reached a small clearing where the ground dipped slightly inward. At its center stood an old Irako stump, blackened by time, its surface marked with symbols faded but not forgotten. Morinkeji's breath caught. She had seen this place before, in her dreams. Without thinking, she knelt. Her palms pressed against the earth, and warmth surged upward, steady and grounding. I don't know the right words, she whispered into the night. But I have come back. The forest responded with silence. Then, slowly, the leaves above rustled though there was no wind. A memory rose uninvited. Her mother teaching her as a child, warning her never to mock the land, never to take without greeting. Morinkeji bowed her head fully to the ground. Tears fell freely, darkening the soil beneath her. I left because I was afraid, she said, voice shaking. I thought the city would save me. The ground beneath her palm pulsed faintly, not violently, like a heartbeat. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. Not a sound from any mouth or drum, but something older, vibrating gently through the soil. Morinkeji froze. Fear rose, but it did not drive her away. A voice emerged, not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. You did not return empty. Her chest tightened painfully. I have nothing, she whispered. You brought yourself. The clearing grew warm. Fireflies gathered, circling slowly like cautious witnesses. Morinkeji remained there until dawn, unmoving. When the first light broke through the trees, the hum faded gently, like a promise sealed. She returned to the house, just as Mama Abimbala stepped outside. The old woman stopped short, eyes widening. Child, she whispered, you smell like fresh earth. Morinkeji looked down at her hands. The blisters were still there, but the bleeding had stopped, and her palms no longer burned. Later that morning, something strange happened. The mango tree in the compound, weak and nearly dead, released a single ripe fruit. It fell gently to the ground, unbroken. Villagers noticed. Whispers spread quickly, uneasy and curious. That tree hasn't borne fruit in years, someone murmured. Not since Mama Ronk died. Morinkeji picked up the mango slowly. It was warm in her hands, heavy with life. She did not smile. She only closed her eyes, knowing this was not a reward. It was a warning. The mango did not rot. Days passed, and it sat on the wooden table inside the house, fresh and firm, as though time had chosen to walk around it instead of through it. People noticed. At the stream, women spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward Morinkeji's compound before lowering their voices further. Fear had replaced laughter, and curiosity had sharpened into suspicion. That tree was dead, one woman said quietly. My husband swore it would be cut down this year. Another shook her head slowly. Nothing grows without permission. Children stopped playing near the compound. Even goats avoided the mango tree, circling it warily, as though sensing something their owners could not explain. Moore and KG felt the change immediately. Greetings became stiff. Smiles disappeared entirely. Doors closed sooner when she walked past. At the elders' meeting place, her name was spoken for the first time in years. Not with warmth, but with caution. She has awakened something, said Baba Alade, his voice rough with age. We must be careful. Others nodded slowly. She went to the forbidden clearing, another elder added. No one goes there unless called. That evening, Moore and KG returned from fetching water to find strange markings drawn in ash near her door. Her heart skipped painfully, but she did not erase them. Mama Abimbola stared at the symbols and sighed deeply. They are testing you, she said. And the land. That night, stones struck the zinc roof without warning. Small at first, then harder, faster. Moore and KG sat upright, heart racing, as whispers rose from outside the compound. Go back to where you came from. You are not wanted. Mama Abimbola clutched her arm tightly. They fear what they do not understand, she whispered. Moore and KG stood and opened the door slowly. The night fell silent immediately. She stepped into the moonlight, barefoot, her posture calm but unyielding. The mango tree rustled softly behind her. I did not come to harm anyone, she said clearly into the darkness. I came to restore what was abandoned. No one answered, but the wind passed through the village like a sigh. The next morning, tragedy struck. A small fire broke out in a nearby compound, burning a storehouse of yams. Though no one was hurt, whispers spread like wildfire. It's her. She brought this. Moore and KG was summoned before the elders at midday. She knelt respectfully, head bowed, hands steady. You left us, Baba Alade said sternly. And now you return with signs and disturbance. Moore and KG lifted her eyes slowly. I return with nothing but my hands and my name. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Silence hung heavy, uncomfortable. Finally, Baba Alade spoke again. If the land favors you, he said, prove it brings life, not fear. Moore and KG swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? Baba Alade pointed toward the abandoned farmland beyond the river. Restore what no one else could. The task was impossible. That land had failed for years. Crops withered there. Hope had long since died. Moore and KG bowed deeply. I will try. As she rose, the mango tree dropped another fruit behind her. This time, it split open on the ground, its seeds exposed. The village gasped. Somewhere beneath the soil, something ancient stirred again. And Moore and KG knew this was no longer just about her mother's house. It was about the future of Itoro itself. The abandoned farmland lay beyond the river like a forgotten wound. Tall grass choked the earth, and dry trees stood crooked, their branches bare as accusing fingers. No bird sang there. Even the wind passed through quickly, as if afraid to linger. Moore and KG stood at the edge of it, cutlass in hand, heart pounding. This was the land the village had given up on, the place where seeds went to die and effort returned shame. Men gathered at a distance, arms folded, watching silently. Women whispered behind wrappers, already certain of her failure. She won't last 3 days, someone muttered. No one ever does. Moore and KG stepped forward anyway. The soil felt hard beneath her feet, cracked like dry lips. She knelt and scooped a handful, letting it fall slowly through her fingers. This land is not dead, she whispered. It is angry. She began to clear the grass under the unforgiving sun. Each swing of the cutlass sent pain shooting through her shoulders, reopening wounds barely healed. Sweat soaked her clothes, stinging her eyes, but she did not stop. By noon, dizziness returned. Her stomach cramped with hunger, and her hands trembled violently. She rested briefly beneath a tree stump, gasping for breath. Memories of air-conditioned offices and cold water flooded her mind like temptation. Go back, her body begged. But her spirit stayed silent and stubborn. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered suddenly. Rain fell hard, pounding the earth like judgment. Villagers ran for shelter, laughing bitterly as they watched her struggle. The land has rejected her too, someone shouted over the rain. Moore and KG dropped to her knees, soaked and shaking. Mud coated her clothes. Her cutlass slipped from her fingers. She pressed both palms into the wet soil. Her tears mixed with rain, disappearing immediately into the ground. I don't know what else to give, she cried aloud. I have already given my pride. The rain slowed. The air grew heavy still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the earth softened beneath her hands. Not sinking, but yielding. Morinkeji felt warmth rise again, gentle but unmistakable. Her breath caught as she leaned closer to the ground. I am listening, she whispered. And for the first time, the land answered without words. She stayed there until night fell, kneeling in silence. When she finally stood, her exhaustion felt different, cleaner, purposeful. The next morning, villagers gathered again. They expected to see the same barren land. Instead, they froze. The soil where Morinkeji had worked was darker, moist, alive. Tiny green shoots had pierced the ground overnight. Small, fragile, but impossible. A murmur rippled through the crowd. That land hasn't grown anything in years. Morinkeji stood quietly at the edge, her face unreadable. She knew this was not the transformation yet. It was only an invitation. And Itoro, whether it liked it or not, had just been invited to change. By dawn, word of the tiny green shoots had spread like fire through Itoro. Villagers gathered at the edge of the farmland, whispering nervously, eyes wide with disbelief. Some craned their necks to get a better view, while elders shook their heads, muttering about impossible things and forgotten curses. She's done something no one else could, one woman said quietly, fear threading her voice. She must not stay, another replied sharply, crossing herself. It is dangerous to meddle with spirits. Children dared not approach the green shoots. Even goats and chickens kept their distance, pecking at the ground elsewhere. The land seemed to hum quietly, like it recognized Morinkeji as more than human. Morinkeji appeared at the far edge of the field, soaked in sweat from another night of tending the earth. Her palms were blistered, her feet raw from walking barefoot. But her eyes were steady, unwavering, watching the villagers as they gathered. A group of men approached cautiously, their faces hard with suspicion. What power are you using? Asked Baba Adikunal, the village elder who had once mocked her mother's ambitions. This is not how life works. Morinkeji wiped sweat from her brow, letting mud-streaked fingers fall to her sides. I am not using power, she said calmly. I am listening. This land remembers those who remember it. Baba Adikunal scoffed, but others whispered among themselves. What if she calls trouble? Someone said. We can't risk it. The whispers turned to action. That afternoon, some men returned with machetes and hoes. They trampled part of the sprouts in a desperate attempt to test her. To prove she had failed, Morinkeji arrived just as the men struck the soil. Her knees sank into the wet earth. Her voice trembled with rage and exhaustion. Stop, she shouted. Do you not see what this land is telling you? The men froze, startled by her intensity. The air felt thick, charged alive. Birds flew off the trees suddenly, and a low, almost imperceptible hum seemed to rise from the soil beneath them. Morinkeji fell to her knees in front of the green shoots, pressing her palms to the earth. Her voice was quieter now, but sharper than any machete. This is my mother's house. This is my land. If you destroy it, you destroy yourselves. The men stepped back, fear replacing envy. Even Baba Adikunal's shoulders stiffened as he realized the truth. This child of the city had returned with something the village had long forgotten. By nightfall, more villagers came, not to watch, but to witness. The land had begun to hum softly, small tendrils of green creeping farther than before. Fireflies circled the sprouts in tight rings, as though blessing them. Morinkeji knelt in the moonlight, exhausted, yet resolute. She whispered into the soil, I do not claim to rule you. I only ask to serve you. And for the first time, the wind carried a faint, approving sigh across the farmland. Even the elders could not deny it now. Something extraordinary was awakening. Somewhere beneath the red earth, roots twisted and stretched. The land had chosen its guardian, and it would not be denied. Morning broke over Itoro, spilling gold across the red earth. Morinkeji rose slowly, muscles still stiff from the night's labor, but her heart pulsed with a quiet hope she had not felt in years. She carried a small tin of water and walked barefoot toward the farmland, her shadow stretching long and thin behind her. The sprouts had grown overnight. Tiny green fingers reached skyward, defying months, even years, of neglect. Moist soil clung to their stems, and morning dew glimmered on each leaf like jewels kissed by the sun. The air smelled sweeter here, fresher, as though the land itself had breathed for the first time in decades. Villagers appeared cautiously at the edge of the field. They whispered in hushed tones, pointing with disbelief. Women fanned themselves nervously. Children pressed against mothers, wide-eyed. Even men, who had mocked her, now paused, hats in hands, their pride swallowed by astonishment. Baba Adekunle stepped forward slowly, his cane tapping against the hardened soil. "By the gods, it grows," he murmured, voice low, trembling. "No one has farmed this land in 10 years. And yet, it breathes." Morinkeji knelt in the dirt, hands sinking into the rich soil. "I am nothing," she whispered softly, almost to herself. "I only returned what was already alive." Mama Abimbola came behind her, smiling faintly. "Your mother's spirit never left," she said. "It guided you back when the city blinded your eyes. Now look what she has given you." Curiosity replaced fear as villagers stepped closer. Some dared to kneel beside her, brushing their hands through the soil, feeling the life beneath their fingertips. Gasps rose as tiny insects scuttled happily through the newly fertile ground. Even the wind seemed different, gentle, patient, watching. Morinkeji stood slowly, wiping mud from her arms. She looked at each face, young and old, and said firmly, "This land does not belong to one person. It belongs to all who care for it." An elder woman, Aya Folake, whispered to her neighbor, tears running down her cheeks. "She left us to chase wealth, but she brought us life instead." The village began to murmur among themselves. "This child, she has returned something sacred. She has restored what we abandoned." The sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the field. By midday, tiny shoots had doubled in size, reaching for the sky with an almost supernatural energy. Birds began to return, chirping tentatively, circling the mango tree as if acknowledging the miracle. Morinkeji knelt once again in the earth, her forehead touching the soil. "I do not command life," she said softly. "I only remember it." Some villagers began to bring water, helping her nurture the sprouts. A sense of unity, long lost to suspicion and envy, began to flow like a river through Itoro. Even Baba Adekunle, stern and skeptical, watched quietly, nodding in approval. By nightfall, the field shimmered under moonlight. Each tiny plant seemed to pulse gently, alive with energy that was both ancient and new. And for the first time, Morinkeji felt a profound connection, not just to the land, but to her mother, her ancestors, and the village she had once abandoned. The wind whispered softly through the mango tree, carrying a message only she could hear. "You returned. You listened. And now, life remembers you." The elders came quietly that morning, without drums or announcement. Baba Adekunle walked at the front, his shoulders no longer stiff with pride, but bent slightly with humility. Behind him followed men and women who once mocked Morinkeji, their eyes lowered, their steps careful. Morinkeji was in the field when they arrived, hands deep in the soil. She did not look up immediately. She felt them before she saw them, the shift in the air, the weight of many hearts coming with one purpose. Baba Adekunle cleared his throat. "Daughter of Rock," he said softly, "we were blind." Morinkeji slowly rose, wiping her hands on her wrapper. She looked at the faces before her and felt no pride, only tired understanding. "The land responded to you," the elder continued, "and to your humility. Teach us how to listen again." Silence followed. Then Morinkeji knelt, before the elders, before the village, before the land. "We listen together," she said, "and we work together." The village bowed its head with her. Work on Mama Ronk's house began the next day. Men brought wood. Women brought water. Children swept the compound with laughter that felt new. Morinkeji climbed the roof herself, passing zinc sheets down with careful hands. Each nail driven into the wood sounded like a heartbeat returning. As walls were patched and floors smoothed, something strange happened. The house seemed to breathe easier. The air inside grew cooler, gentler. Mama Abimbola sat in the corner, tears running freely. "This house waited," she whispered. "It waited for blood to return." That night, as Morinkeji slept beneath the repaired roof, she dreamed of her mother again. Mama Ronk stood smiling, her hands clean, her eyes at peace. "You have restored more than wood," she said. "You have restored lineage." The farmland exploded with life. Cassava leaves spread wide. Maize rose tall. Vegetables grew thick and stubborn. Rain came gently now, on time, never too much. The river swelled, but did not overflow, as though obeying an unseen boundary. Hungry households ate again. Children stopped crying at night. Moore and KG watched from a distance, heart full and quiet. This was never about her name. It was about remembering how to belong. One evening, Baba Adikunal approached her alone. "The land has chosen you," he said carefully. Moore and KG shook her head. "No, the land chose itself." News traveled fast beyond Itoro. Officials from the city came in shiny vehicles, shoes clean, voices loud. They offered money. They offered contracts. They offered fame. They wanted the land. Moore and KG listened politely, hands folded. When they finished speaking, she stood and looked toward the farmland. "You abandoned this place," she said calmly. "And now that it breathes, you want to own it." Silence fell. "This land is not for sale," she continued. "It is for survival." The officials left angrily. The village exhaled together. Moore and KG had chosen the village over the city, fully this time. That night, the mango tree bloomed fully for the first time in years. Its fruits glowed softly in the moonlight, heavy and ripe. Villagers gathered without being called. Drums sounded, slow, respectful, ancestral. Moore and KG stood beneath the tree, not as a city woman, not as a savior, but as a daughter of the soil. Mama Abimbala tied a white cloth around her waist. "This is not crowning," she said. "This is recognition." The wind passed through the village gently, and for the first time in decades, Itoro slept without fear. Moore and KG closed her eyes. She had stopped running. She had become root. Peace never arrives without envy following close behind. As Itoro began to thrive, neighboring villages took notice. Farmers crossed boundaries quietly at night, inspecting the green fields with hungry eyes. Rumors spread like harmattan fire. Some said Moore and KG was hiding gold beneath the soil. Others said she was using forbidden powers meant only for shrines. One evening, Baba Adikunal came running to Moore and KG's compound, breathless. "The boundary stakes have been removed," he said. "They are testing us." Moore and KG felt a tightness in her chest. The land that had healed them was about to be challenged. That night, thunder rolled in the distance, low and warning. The attack came before dawn. Flames rose suddenly from the edge of the farmland, licking dry grass with violent hunger. Villagers screamed and ran with buckets, fighting fire with bare hands and prayers. Smoke choked the sky, turning morning into night. Moore and KG ran too, heart pounding wildly. She saw Kunal, a young boy who had helped her plant maize, trapped near the fire line. "Kunal!" she screamed. He ran, but stumbled. By the time they reached him, it was too late. The fire was quenched, but the boy lay still, his small body wrapped in smoke and silence. The village fell into a grief so heavy it bent backs. Mothers wailed. Fathers stared at the ground, fists clenched. Moore and KG knelt beside Kunal's body, shaking uncontrollably. Blood was on the land again. Grief demanded a target. Whispers turned sharp, cutting through the village like knives. If she didn't wake the land, if she didn't bring attention. Eyes turned toward Moore and KG again, this time not with fear, but anger. Baba Adikunal stood before the crowd, voice breaking. "This death must not divide us." But division had already entered. That night, Moore and KG sat alone beneath the mango tree, tears soaking the earth. For the first time since returning, doubt wrapped around her heart like chains. "Maybe I was wrong to come back," she whispered. The land stayed silent. The city returned for her quietly. A former colleague arrived in a polished car, wearing sympathy like perfume. "There's a position waiting," he said gently. "Good pay. No more suffering." Moore and KG looked at her scarred hands. At the house she rebuilt. At the land still breathing despite loss. That night, she dreamed again. Mama Ronk appeared, not smiling this time. "Roots are tested by fire," her mother said. "Do not leave before the test ends." Moore and KG woke with tears already falling. At Kunal's burial, Moore and KG stepped forward unexpectedly. Her voice shook, but it did not break. "This land took a child," she said, "and it must give life back." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She removed her sandals and pressed her bare feet into the soil. "If my staying brings more death, let the land take me instead." The wind rose suddenly, strong and cold. The mango tree bent low, leaves trembling violently. Baba Adekunle dropped to his knees. "This is not ordinary courage," he whispered. Morinkeji stood firm, eyes closed, tears falling freely. She had made her vow, and deep beneath Itoro, something ancient began to awaken fully, for the first time in generations. After Kunal's burial, the rain stopped. Not gradually, not gently. It stopped as though the sky itself had turned away. Days passed under a hard, merciless sun. Leaves curled. The soil cracked open again, lines spreading like wounds across the farmland. Villagers whispered nervously. Maybe the land is angry again. Maybe it wants more. Morinkeji worked silently from dawn till dusk. She carried water from the river in heavy clay pots, her back bent, her lips dry, her strength thinning. Each step felt heavier than the last. Still, she did not complain. At night, she lay on the bare floor, staring at the ceiling. Sleep avoided her like a curse. Hunger crept back into Itoro quietly. It did not announce itself with cries at first, only with empty pots and longer silences. Children grew thin again. Mothers rationed meals carefully, their eyes dull with fear. Some villagers avoided Morinkeji now. Others watched her closely, as though waiting for her to fall. Mama Abimbola grew weaker each day. The old woman coughed through the night, her breath shallow and strained. One evening, she held Morinkeji's hand tightly. "If this land demands something," she whispered, "it will demand the most precious." Morinkeji felt a chill settle deep inside her bones. The dream came on the seventh night, without rain. Morinkeji stood at the dry riverbed, cracked and empty. Mama Ronk appeared on the opposite bank, barefoot and calm. "The land is not cruel," she said softly. "It is truthful. What does it want?" Morinkeji cried. Her mother pointed to the river. "To give life, something must be released." Morinkeji woke with a sharp gasp. Her chest burned as understanding dawned slowly, painfully. She knew what the land was asking. Before dawn, Morinkeji bathed and dressed in plain white. She tied her hair simply, removed every ornament, every sign of comfort. She walked through the village barefoot. People watched silently from doorways, sensing finality in her steps. At the river, she knelt on the dry earth. Her tears fell freely, soaking into dust that thirsted for more. "I came back to give life," she whispered. "If my life is the price, take it." The wind rose suddenly, swirling around her violently. Trees bent, birds scattered. She stepped into the riverbed and lay flat against the earth, arms spread wide. A surrender older than fear. A sound tore through the village at dawn. Not thunder, not wind. A cry. Women ran toward the river. Men followed, hearts pounding, dread heavy in their chests. They found Morinkeji unconscious, her body cold, her lips pale. But the riverbed, once dry, was wet. Water seeped slowly from the ground. Then faster. The earth trembled gently, like something waking from deep sleep. Rain clouds gathered suddenly overhead, dark and thick. The first drop fell on Morinkeji's forehead. Then another. Then many. As rain poured down, Morinkeji's chest rose sharply. She gasped, eyes flying open. The village screamed in disbelief. Water rushed through the river, full and clean. The land drank deeply. Morinkeji lay there, trembling, alive. Not taken. Chosen. Baba Adekunle fell to his knees in the mud, sobbing openly. "She gave herself," he cried, and the land answered. Rain washed Idoro clean that day. But the greatest transformation was still coming. The rain did not stop after one day. It fell gently for 3 nights, steady and respectful, as though the sky itself was apologizing for having stayed away too long. When the sun finally returned, Itoro no longer looked the same. The farmland burst open with green so thick it hurt the eyes. Crops stood taller than any elder could remember, leaves broad and stubborn, refusing to bow. Cassava swelled beneath the soil. Maize stood in proud rows, heavy with promise. Vegetables spread wildly, spilling beyond boundaries, reclaiming forgotten corners. People walked through the fields in silence. Some laughed softly, others wept openly. Morinkeji stood at the edge of it all, quiet. She felt lighter somehow, as though something heavy had been lifted from her spirit. The first miracle was not the crops. It was Mama Abimbola, the old woman, who had not risen from her maddened days, stood one morning without assistance. Her cough was gone. Her eyes were clear. Word spread quickly. A child with swollen legs began to walk. A man whose sight had faded saw shapes again. Morinkeji did not lay hands on anyone. She only brought them to the land, asked them to touch the soil, to listen. This place heals, she said simply, and it remembers kindness. Soon, people came from neighboring villages, not to mock, not to test, but to beg. The city returned again, but this time without arrogance. Officials came with elders, heads bowed, voices careful. They offered schools, clinics, roads, not ownership. Morinkeji listened quietly, then spoke with calm authority. Build with us, not over us. The agreement was sealed beneath the mango tree. No papers first, only trust. That night, drums sounded not for celebration, but for thanksgiving. The rhythm was slow, deep, ancestral. Mama Ronk's old house no longer stood as a lonely relic of the past. Its cracked mud walls had been patched. The zinc roof gleamed faintly under the morning sun, and smoke rose from the cooking hearth as if the house itself had begun to breathe again. Morinkeji walked through the open doorway barefoot, her feet connecting once more with the red earth that had nourished her family for generations. She ran her fingers along the wooden beams her father had once carried, along the walls her mother had plastered with care, and felt a quiet reverence in every touch. The house seemed to hum, alive with memory and promise. Children ran in and out, laughing, chasing one another through the courtyard, their bare feet slapping the ground with a rhythm that echoed across the village. They no longer feared the empty spaces that once seemed vast and hollow. Now, every corner was full of life. Morinkeji watched as Adebayo, the boy who had once helped her plant maize, guided a younger child through the garden, pointing at the growing cassava leaves and teaching them the names of herbs. The girl's eyes sparkled with curiosity, her laughter bright enough to make Morinkeji's chest ache with a mix of joy and relief. Elders gathered on the veranda, speaking softly among themselves. They had once doubted her, mocked her, even whispered against her in the shadowed nights. But now they watched with awe and newfound respect. Baba Adekunal, the village elder who had challenged her the first day she returned, stood leaning on his cane, his eyes glistening. "You have reminded us of what we forgot," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "This house, this land, it remembers kindness, and it remembers those who serve it." Morinkeji smiled faintly, not with pride, but with understanding. The land had been patient, waiting for the right hands and the right heart to tend it again. Morinkeji moved to the mango tree beside the house, now fully grown and vibrant, its branches heavy with fruit. She ran her hands along the rough bark and felt a warmth pulse beneath her palms. It was as though the tree itself recognized her effort, recognized her sacrifice, recognized her return. Villagers gathered beneath it, children climbing its lower branches, women leaning against it as they whispered blessings to the earth. The tree was no longer just a tree. It had become a symbol, a living witness to the resilience of life and the power of return. Inside the house, Morinkeji arranged mats and bedding for those who had no place to stay, her movements deliberate, patient, and gentle. Mama Abimbola, now recovering fully, sat by the doorway, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred porridge in a clay pot. "This is more than a home," she said softly. "It is a sanctuary for hearts, for memories, for hope." Morinkeji nodded, her eyes misty, feeling the weight of her journey, the city she had left behind, the pain she had endured, the nights of doubt and tears. And she realized that the house had not just been repaired with wood and mud, it had been rebuilt with love, courage, and the stubborn will of a daughter who refused to abandon her roots. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden light across the courtyard, Morinkeji stepped outside. She looked at the children playing, the elders speaking softly, the villagers tending the fields and preparing for the evening meal. She took a deep breath, letting the scent of wet earth, ripe fruit, and cooking fire fill her senses. This house, this village, this land, everything she had thought lost was alive again. And in that moment, she knew the true power of coming home, to heal, to nurture, and to witness transformation that went beyond herself, touching everyone and everything around her. They stopped calling her Morinkeji alone. They called her Ayarile, Mother of the Land. The name frightened her at first. She was still human, still tired, still learning. But Baba Adekunal placed his hand on her shoulder one evening. "Names grow when destiny does," he said. Morinkeji looked across Itoro, at children running, crops dancing in the wind, smoke rising from full kitchens. She remembered the city, the noise, the emptiness. She had not returned to fix a house. She had returned to awaken a people. And still, the greatest transformation was yet to come. Seasons passed, but Itoro no longer counted them the old way. Harvest no longer brought fear of scarcity. It brought songs, full barns, and quiet gratitude. Children who once knew hunger now knew names of seeds. They learned when to plant, when to wait, and how to greet the earth before touching it. Morinkeji taught without standing above anyone. She worked alongside them, her hands always dirty, her laughter rare but warm. Travelers came from far places, asking questions. How did this land revive? Morinkeji always answered the same way. We stopped abandoning it. One night, Morinkeji dreamed differently. No land, no river, no fire, only her mother. Mama Ronk sat beneath the mango tree, younger than Morinkeji had ever known her. Her skin glowed softly, untouched by pain or labor. My child, she said gently, my work is finished. Morinkeji's heart clenched. Don't leave me, she whispered. Mama Ronk smiled. I never left. But now, you must let me rest. When Morinkeji woke, tears soaked her mat. Outside, the mango tree dropped one single fruit. And then, nothing. The mango tree did not die, but it stopped bearing fruit. Villagers whispered nervously, fear stirring old memories. Had the favor ended? Morinkeji placed her palm against the trunk and closed her eyes. She felt peace, not warning. This tree gave until it didn't need to anymore, she said. So must we. That year, the land still yielded abundantly. The miracle had moved, from signs to people. A final offer came from the city. Not temptation, recognition. They wanted Morinkeji to lead a regional agricultural council. Power, influence, a voice. The village gathered beneath the mango tree as she considered. Not begging, not fearing. Morinkeji looked at the faces before her, strong now, capable, awake. She smiled. I will go, she said softly. But I will always return. She did not belong to one place anymore. She belonged to purpose. Years later, children sat beneath the same mango tree, listening to elders speak. They spoke of a time when the land was abandoned, when hunger ruled, when hope left first. They spoke of a young woman who returned from the city with nothing but her name, who bled, doubted, knelt, and listened. They did not call her a hero. They called her a reminder. That land does not die. Homes do not forget. Roots wait. And whenever the soil of Itoro is touched, gently and with respect, it still feels warm. As though someone is listening. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment for more videos.